Buenas.
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 Welcome back to Film Posers for Boricuas ranting, raving, and reviewing cinema.
I'm Sofia.
I'm Juan.
I'm Gabriela.
And I am the host for today's episode, Josie Meléndez. In today's episode, we have three trailblazing Latinx filmmakers. Their work ranges from the dark side of stories to the uplifting and that which challenges the status quo, with a goal to diversify the visual medium and create a space for Latinx in the seventh art. From a selection of various respective projects that have gained recognition to creating spaces for voices that are often ignored, we are so proud to welcome onto the podcast co-directors and producers of Mucho Mucho Amor, The Legend of Walter Mercado, Cristina Costantini, Kareem Tabsch, and Alex Fumero.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Nice intro.
Wow.
Which actually...
We'll try and live up to it.
I mean, you guys are pretty much living up to it right now. You guys capture celestial magic in your project.
Thank you so much. It means a lot. I mean, that's kind of why we made it.
Yeah.
For like more than anything, you know, for like our folks.
Yeah, you guys are like the number one demo for this film.
Yeah.
So we really hope you like it. Like Puerto Rican, bicultural, bilingual. Yeah. We hope you guys liked it.
We all loved it. Spoiler alert.
We all loved
it.
My mom's actually interested in rewatching it, so I'm gonna rewatch it with her once there's light, hopefully.
Oh, that's great.
Once there's light, we're hoping.
Yeah. My dad is not a very emotional person. Like, he doesn't express his emotions a lot, but when he saw the documentary, he actually cried.
Wow.
And he was just so deeply moved by it because he did grow up with Walter. And, you know, his grandmother, my grandmother, they all watched it together. So it was just a reminder of his childhood. And he was just overcome with emotion, and he absolutely loved it. And he says hello to all of you.
Oh, thank you. Hello, Dad. Hola, Papi.
Which actually, you guys managed to capture and exalt the beauty of not only this Latin American figure, but also the community as a whole. Because it was very impressive to see that, because usually when you see a Puerto Rican figure, usually the people behind the project tend to be from the same background, whether it's an Ecuadorian figure or a Mexican. Usually the people in the crew are from that background. So it's very enlightening and heartwarming to see such love in the documentary from different backgrounds as well, when you showed how Walter's impact was almost universal.
Yeah, I think for the three of us, we all grew up watching Walter with our abuelitas when we were little, and he had such an impact on us then. You know, for us, it was like, who is this magical man or person or being of light? You know, what is it? Is it a man? Is it a woman? Like, you know, just so many questions. And then, you know, why does my grandma love him so much? Why is my abuelita like hanging on his every word? And can he really tell the future? Like, there were so many questions as we were kids. And then I think as an adult, we started like really recognizing how brave it was for Walter to do what Walter was doing at that time. And you know, I think for all of us, he was our first kind of interaction with the idea of genderqueer, or, you know, the non-binary. And as adults, I think we have a newfound love and respect for him. And so the three of us kind of set out to look for him at the same time with the similar kind of love, and we found each other basically in the process. And it's been a great privilege to tell the story, and we wanted to pay respect to this Puerto Rican icon. And we talk all the time about, you know, I think Walter is the product of that island. I'm not sure he would have been able to do what he did if it was not for the Puerto Rican people loving him when he was bold and brave and being different at such a young age. You know, he did face a lot of criticism, but he also was loved and celebrated when he was a dancer and an actor and a telenovela star. And I think all that stuff was very important for him to kind of gain the confidence and have an audience. And so Puerto Rico is definitely the reason Walter is the way Walter is.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, one of the reasons that like Kareem and I both grew up in Miami, and one of the things like I loved about being in San Juan was like it's so familiar in a way because of the like it's like mostly people are speaking in Spanish, but everybody pretty much kind of speaks English, sort of, you know, like exactly like Miami, you know, and there's like and the way people recognize Walter, like on the street, you know, you know, whatever, you're like narcissistic and think everything is like where you're from, but like, but I was like, oh, that's only happens in Miami, you know, and then to see it in San Juan where it actually was happening way before it ever happened in Miami was such like a cool experience, you know, like just watching people like go up to him and him go up to them, right? Like with so like he would just act like he knew everyone in San Juan, you know, which was just like a wild thing, you know, like kiss on the cheek. How are you? How have you been? You know, and then you're like, Walter, how do you know them? And they're like, oh no, I've never met that person.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
When we would walk through the streets with him, I remember people would look at him because they would obviously be struck by the fact that it was Walter. And like Alex is saying, he wouldn't wait for them to come up to him. He would just be like, hi, how are you? And like sharing his energy and his presence with people. Like he would get over, you know, when you see a celebrity, you are nervous and you're like, what should I do? And he would answer that question for people. He would be like, you say hello to me. That's what you do. And he just like he just gave of himself always. Remember, like, you know,
Yeah.
he wouldn't wait for people to come up to him, which is, I've never seen that before in my life. It was amazing.
Yeah, he loved people. He loved people, and I think that was, he didn't like selfies, which is the one thing I think that we heard. He was not crazy about selfies, but he loved people, and he loved chatting with people, and he was never one to like rush away. He always wanted to have like a meaningful interaction with everyone. But he just, I mean, you know, all eyes on him when he was anywhere. It was great. For us, it was so important to be able to, you know, to at the same time kind of share how universal Walter was. Like he belonged to everyone, to all of us as Latinos, but to underscore how he was like Boricua through and through, because that was something he was immensely proud of, as he says in the film.
Soy
And
Ibero.
like that.
Soy
Ibero
Ibero.
Puertorriqueño. Yeah.
You are Boricua, yeah, Puerto Rican. Yeah, it was a delight.
Anna, you had a question.
Okay, so for the first question is, I want to know from you guys. Could you tell us a little bit about the first meeting and interaction when Walter entered the room to talk about the documentary?
Yeah, Kareem, go ahead.
We had not all three of us had not all been in the same room ever before until the night before we met. Christine and I had never met in person until. So there's a lot of like, you know, butterflies of you know, we're meeting each other. We've already agreed to this, you know, what turned out to be this 3+ year marriage and making this movie. And so the next morning, so Walter lived in the Coupé, so in the outskirts of San Juan, and he lived in a house that could only be described as Walter Mercado's house. It was like a neighborhood that probably had seen better days in the 80s and early 90s, behind a gated community. All the houses kind of look similar, except that one. You're like, that's where Walter Mercado lives. This yellow and blue, like Moroccan villa behind gates. We knew which one it was, just pulling up. He clearly has to live there. I just remember that first realization. So funny. So we pull up. We're all super excited, and we're nervous for sure. There's a great video that Alex took as we were walking to the gates, and he's like, Christina, where are we? We're at Walter Mercado's house. We're all excited. Like we turned into like 6-year-olds.
Yeah, it feels like Alex says, it feels like you're going to the North Pole to meet Santa Claus. Like your mind almost can't wrap your head around it. Sorry.
And you find out that Santa Claus is real. Like you're going to meet Santa Claus, and it's been verified that Santa Claus is now real. You're like, wow. We go into his house. We come into his office. We meet his nieces and his assistant and secretary. They take us upstairs, and you like once you're walking through the office is just kind of jam packed full of stuff. But then you're walking through the house, you can't help but look around because it's crazy. It's like Alex actually described this really good. It's one part abuela's house, one part ashram. All at the same time, you're like, all of this stuff doesn't belong together, but it does. And we're taken up to one of the sitting areas, which is a sunken-in living room. So it's about 3 feet down from the main living area. And it's chock full of books and religious iconography and santos and a picture of James Dean and books everywhere you go and awards. And we're there for like 40 minutes waiting for Walter, talking to the families, pleasantries. And then all of a sudden, like without any preparation, we just hear, Kareem, Cristina, Alex. And we look up and there is Walter in head to toe white linen with these gold rimmed glasses and his like beautiful mane of like gold hair. And we're like, and he's at the main part of the living and we're in the sunken in living room. So he's standing 3 feet above us. It looks like an apparition. It looks like all of a sudden like La Virgen se te apareció enfrente. Like, I mean, we didn't know what to say. And then he came up to each one of us and he grabbed us by the hand and he stared at us in the eyes and he told us something about each one of us. And it's like everyone else disappeared. It was only you and him for that moment. And we were like, Bobial. We're like, it was amazing. It was amazing. And then in true Walter fashion, because Walter's worlds are like all over the place, like after chatting and holding court for half an hour, he took us to lunch in like a strip mall somewhere. Like a hibachi lunch in a strip mall. But that was like Walter.
And it was like, they were calling it what, Chinese food? No, what were they calling it? It was really, it was like something my abuela would do.
El restaurante chino or something like that. And then we went and it was a sushi place. And we were like, this is not a Chinese place at all. Like,
yeah.
And Walter, I think, ordered like a miso soup, and that was it. Like, it was just like so funny.
It was so cute. I mean, it's like exactly like my grandma would do. My grandma would call that restaurant a Chinese restaurant too.
So my next question is, you've been sharing various clips that ended up on the cutting room floor. Is there a certain aspect of his life that you wish you could have been able to explore more or were simply cut?
It's a good question.
It is really fun to be able to share all of these extras because there were things that were just like, we don't have time to get into. You know what I do? I'm sad about that there's, you know, it doesn't fit into the narrative, but I loved that the final part of the movie, his finale. You see those dancers in the robes. What I am sad about is you don't know that Walter planned that whole event, or he like choreographed it with a choreographer who we love named Rosie Herrera. He worked on it. He picked the music. He like told Rosie what he wanted them to be wearing, and each one represented a different sign of the zodiac. He had like a very clear image, very much informed by like old cinema of how he wanted his entrance to go. And then I'm also sad that you don't get to, we never were able to get this detail in, but the throne, after Walter sat in the throne, it went to a quinceañera. And so he was kind of like rushed out of the throne because it had a quinceañera to go to. And it's just like it's so perfect. It's just so cute. But we didn't, it didn't fit. It didn't fit in the film. And I'm glad we cut it, but I'm sad that it's that story that people don't know that story.
And also there's like 200, we actually do keep this line where it's easy saying, hay 200 invitados, there's 200 invited people. What we didn't clarify in the film that 200 people were invited, 600 people showed up.
I believe it.
Wow.
I mean, it was we're shoulder to shoulder.
And at one point, we ended up having to step in to be like the security guards, which we don't talk about this very much, but like, there was a moment when we were scared for Walter, where we were like, people are breaking his throne because the throne started falling apart because people were like stepping on it. And he was like, hadn't been around that many people for so long that he was kind of scared. No, not scared, but just like
overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed. Yeah. And Kareem, Alex, and I, we were trying to direct, and like, you know, shoot the scene, capture the moment. And then at one point we're like, oh my God, is Walter okay? And
Protect
Kareem
Walter.
and I were like pushing people off the throne, and Alex was trying to get people in a line, and he, at the end of the night, you see Alex is there going, okay, one at a time, you may go. Like, we became like security guards and event planners.
For the longest time, the only picture I had of the event was a friend took a picture of me pulling the throne out of the space. And I'm in like, we're all dressed up because we're shooting, but it's actually also a social event. So we're all very dressed for the event. And I'm like in a sequin suit, pulling Walter back, looking like a mess. It was so much fun. It was crazy.
We were like pissed too. It was like,
Yeah, we were very upset.
it was a mixture between like us trying to keep Walter safe and like Miami and all of the characters that come with Miami descending on Walter. And then also like trying to direct, trying to produce, trying to also enjoy the moment because it was so important for Walter. I don't think we were able to enjoy it until we saw it in the film, really. Like we were like...
I was just mad we weren't like we had talked to the museum because getting those shots was really hard. So we had like actually gone earlier and said, hey, can we like rehearse whatever's going to happen so that the camera knows where to, and all of that went completely out the window because they just did not have enough security people. So it's just also frustrating because we we wanted to even capture how crazy it was, you know what I mean? And like you couldn't even do that because if we didn't step in, like I don't know what would have happened to him, you know? So it just sort of it derailed things, but I think it worked out in the end.
Well, we got it, yeah. But it was nuts.
I wish we had included more of the like Shantiananda like backstory.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know if you guys remember, but like Walter at some point during when he was having legal battles, which I never understood this when it was happening, changed his name to Shantiananda, and he like changed his look. And it turns out that name was given to him by Osho, the Rajneesh, the guy from Wild Wild Country, who on Netflix, who started that like cult in Oregon, and Walter had gone in the 70s on like an Eat, Pray, Love trip to like India and like studied with this guy in his ashram there, which is just insane. And then like there are pictures of him in Walter's house. Like, so Walter was like very like I feel like till the end, Walter was like Osho, my guru, you know? And I'm not sure how aware he was of like what happened to Osho after, you know? Like, I don't know if he knows the rest of the story, you know?
He did see the series. He did see the series. I remember we talked to him.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he made the point to say that he visited him in Pune before Oregon. And Oregon happened.
Yeah, he would say, I was in the before part. I was in the... he would always, he would clarify.
Oh, that's right, because
like,
he talked about Sheila. He talked about Sheila. Right.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I mean, you know, he lived such a rich life. There's so many crazy little details, and there's funny little things in his house that he would point out kind of in passing. You're like, wait, what? What's that? And then we were like, tell it to us on camera. And he was like, oh, no, we can't do that. There's tons of things. One of the things that I loved is that Walter collected everything, basically. His house was full of stuff. and he lots of little figurines, and there's like curio cabinet of figurines. He's like, this one, somebody gave it to me in one of my travels. And I thought, oh, so beautiful. And then I picked it up, and the head came off, and it was a cocaine spoon. So like, and we're like, wait, what? And he's like, I didn't use it. I was given to as a gift. And then we're like, well, that's hilarious. You should tell that on camera. He's like, no. Like, oh my God.
And then what happened is then we brought the camera around and he went, oh, I have never done drugs in my entire life. And then a year later, we were in this like Indian store in downtown San Juan with him, an Ayurvedic store. And he was asking about CBD, and we were like, wait, what? And he was trying to get CBD, and then he was like, oh, but you know, marijuana, it doesn't do it for me, like, unlike LSD, which I love so much. And we were like, wait.
Yeah.
What? Like, with everything, there were like 10 versions of the truth with Walter. It's like his birthday. Who knows? Who knows when Walter was born? The family says he was 88. There's now like some other birth certificate online that people are saying he's not 88, but every newspaper reported he died at 87. So it's like, who knows? Who knows? I think Walter wins. When there are 10 versions of the truth, Walter wins.
Yeah.
I personally love the parrot story that you shared. I loved that.
We
so
were
much.
laughing so much.
Yeah.
He's amazing. It's an amazing story.
That was just an aside too. That was actually at the very end of a shooting trip. Christina and Alex had left that morning, and it was just me and our cinematographer Pete Dalton, and we were literally just about to wrap. It was like the last thing, and then just kind of on a whim, he told this story, and it was hilarious. Again, it didn't fit in the film, but that was actually one of the. I think that's almost like one of the challenges of like what you had is we had so much because he had a million funny stories, a million interesting anecdotes, and they don't all fit in the movie at the end of the day. So we're very thankful that they're starting to come out through social media at least because Walter is so cute and endlessly watchable that now there's like you get to see more Walter.
I just love his impression of the bird. Puta. Yeah, he's just such a good storyteller.
It really is. It really is.
Juan.
So I was actually going to ask, what was it like to go behind the scenes with Walter to get that unfiltered perspective of the life of a public figure who was private? He was very private. I remember in the documentary that he didn't want to share everything, and even in the story he just told about the gift he received, like we didn't know that.
Yeah, he was very private. I think the three of us just had such a ball with him. You know, people say that you shouldn't ever meet your idols because they are never going to live up to it. But I think Walter was just so kind and sweet and lovable and funny. And you know, the three of us love laughing and we love humor. And I think he picked up on that and turned it up. You know, and so we were always laughing. I think he was teasing us. We were joking with him, always in a nice way. He would always tease us in a nice way. But for example, I broke something in the house. I broke this Greek amphora, like a Grecian vase, and from Athens. It's remarkable. Let me just say in my defense, it's remarkable we didn't break more because the place is stuffed with antiquities and also just like random stuff too. But so I broke a Grecian vase, and Walter would never let me forget it. Like every time I saw him, whenever he was annoyed at us, during an interview, if he didn't want to answer a question, he'd go, "Oh, there was a beautiful woman once who came in my house and broke my favorite vase." Like, he loved teasing us.
I'm also upset that Christina told you that story because one of my pleasures is telling that story about Christina. And so she just flipped me right at the legs. And this is how brilliant this woman is. Just, this is a good time to make sure.
Get it in.
To her credit, she didn't mention is that she also bought another Grecian vase and had it shipped to Walter in Puerto Rico.
Oh,
it was maybe an eighth of the size, though. I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell the scale on Etsy, and then when I saw it in real life, I was like, "Ooh, that is way smaller."
it's the intention that matters.
Exactly.
Hannah.
Okay, so one of the meetings that you guys used to tell the story was animation. We would like to know the process and inspiration behind it.
Yeah, it was, we talked a lot about how do we get into Walter's like magical world. That was important to us, like get you to feel his magical vibe. The house was kind of magical. It was like spooky and weird and wonderful and it had an energy to it. So we talked a lot about this, and one of the things we thought about was recreations, and like we talked about, we already even had a young Walter cast in our mind who was gonna play Walter.
God, yeah.
And we did a little bit of recreations in the beginning of the film when you see all the families sitting around, like the family living rooms. Those are recreations, but like it didn't feel like we could really get into the vibe completely of Walter's world. So Christina said, we should really think about using tarot as a device because Walter loved the tarot cards. He had a preferred deck, which were the Rider-Waite deck. And I think as soon as she said it, that's brilliant. Like, let's do that. And then we thought animation would be the smartest way to do that. We did try a live action version of that too. It just didn't kind of grasp everything we wanted it to do. There's an animator who I love and who wanted to work with for a while named Alexa Lim Haas. And so taking Christina's idea of the tarot deck and the style of those decks, and we just kind of put it in Alexa's hands, and the result is the animation you see there. And I think it's probably our favorite thing in the movie. We still just watch it like, wow, it's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And it allowed us to kind of use it as chapter headings too.
Yeah, she did an incredible job.
Yeah, that was like one of my favorite parts of like the whole documentary, honestly. And I think one of the title cards that I really loved was the tarot card where he had the Puerto Rican cape. It was really beautiful. I loved it.
The cloaked man.
Yeah,
that was the cape that he let Lin-Manuel wear. Yeah. And
yes.
it was misreported that he had given the cape to Lin-Manuel.
I remember that.
There was a little bit of drama about that because Walter was like,
he's not giving that cape to anyone.
I would not give this cape.
Yeah, that cape is one of his most famous ones. It's one that everyone recognizes. Everyone sees it. It's like, that's Walter Mercado's cape. Like, everyone here knows it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that might end up in the Smithsonian actually.
Oh, I believe it.
It better.
Okay. Juan.
So I have a two-parter question. The first part I'm gonna ask really quick, and then Josie's gonna ask the second part. The first part of mine is, was there any advice that Walter gave to any of you personally that you still cherish to this day?
And then the second part would be that it's impossible to work with a person like Walter and not feel changed in some way. What is the biggest takeaway from this experience for each of you, and how do you see this affecting your future projects from now on?
Very good questions.
Yeah.
Guys?
I
don't remember any specific advice that was that different than, it's like Walter's advice is like pretty much the same for everybody. You know what I mean? Like, even though it'll be like a ton of detail, astrological detail about like what's going to happen to you, but then the advice is always the same, right? Which is like, stay strong, go after what you want. You know what I mean? Like, be yourself. Like, it's all, it's like this, it's all that kind of stuff. I will say, I think just being around him and seeing how kind of uncompromisingly himself he was, that was like the biggest thing I took, was just like, he really just did not care what anyone thought about him. He really took like the I don't care pill, like, and that really impacted me, I would say. And also, like, I personally left like a very kind of corporate career path to just like launch out on my own, to like produce stuff and take a risk. And so that, to me, like, this has been really affirming, just in terms of like, I did something that was like, could not be more personal or related to like my own personal history, that feels so like niche in a way to me, right? Like, that then like, was such a, not only was like, has been a success, but was such a great experience to make with these guys, that it like, it just confirms that like, to thine own self be true Walter philosophy, like, it's all very like meta for me. So that's kind of what I take with it.
Well, Kareem and I had a terrible time working with Alex, so I don't know. So we all really love each other, which made this whole process wonderful. But no, I think Walter practices like a radical kind of form of kindness and love, which is like, I think he was just so true to himself. And that, I think, especially in this industry, it's easy to get caught up in like what's cool and what's, what is of the moment and what is, and like there's a lot of like meanness in the industry. And I think Walter as a North Star is like in his kindness and his love, rejecting all of that. I don't know, just using that as a personal North Star has been helpful. I just see him as a model. Also, I think above all, just like how hard he worked. He was, his body was basically falling apart while we were working with him, and he was showing up and giving us his all and fighting through the pain, and like, he just had this passion to create and make stuff and be and to work hard. And I really admire that, and I hope that I can be 88 or 87 or however old he was and be working that hard.
Yeah, and I would add, I think that Walter did read all of our astral charts, but it was so like, we made a pact going in that we weren't going to ask him to do that because people ask him all the time, so he did it quite naturally. And I think that the way they came so naturally, we caught off guard. So I don't remember exactly the things he told us. Like Christina and I are both Libras, so he did underscore that we're very, very creative. And we're like, oh. And he's like, and very, very stubborn. And
Assholes.
So that stood out. But I think it's actually, it goes back to like what Christina said about hard work. I mean, I think there's just two things that he wasn't like he took us personally to teach us, but he did teach us personally, and both as children in the process of making this, that that love is the most important thing. That like always lead with love and respond to negative energy and respond to like difficult situations with love instead of like, and I think I have the temper, and I know that if I'm reminded to like ground myself in that and not immediately act off and wanting to tell someone off, if I could like channel that, it has been really, it's made life better. And I definitely feel like I learned that from Walter, particularly in the time working with him. It just, he always kind of led with love. But to the point that Christina made about, work hard, one of the things that I always took from him is his ambition. He was just so ambitious. And not for the, like, I don't necessarily think that it was about like reaching new levels of success, because he reached these huge levels of success. I think his ambition came from like loving what he did and wanting to continue doing it and wanting to continue more because it made him happy. Making other people happy made him happy. So even when he was very clearly in his final stage of life, he was telling us about the book he was working on, about the trip he wanted to make to Mexico next year, about all the programs that he was discussing. And I don't know if I know some of those things are true. But I also know that when he was talking about it, I knew that it wasn't going to happen. Like, he was clearly at the very end of his life, but he still talked about it. He had this ambition to keep on going. And that's really spoken to me. So like, I've taken that, like, be content, do it for the love of what you're doing, but keep pushing and keep wanting to do more, because that gives you energy and that gives you life.
Yeah, I mean, and I also think like a little bit of delusion can be a good thing. Like, if you don't need to constantly be reminding yourself of why things won't work. You can work through the things that aren't going to work about them. But you think about Walter's career, and he really hit it big when he was in his 60s. Like he was big on the island, but by the time he was really huge, he was late 50s, early 60s, when most people's careers are not just starting to take off. So there also is just that element of like, you just stick with it, work really hard, and you have a little bit of delusion. I think a little bit of a delusion can be a good thing.
Yes. Well, that's actually all for today's episode. That was our last question. We are so happy to have you here. We love chatting with you, and we just appreciate everything you've done for the community as a whole. And we just hope for lots of mucha buena suerte for your future endeavors, and that many doors open for you in the future.
Thank you so much. That's so nice. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
We're rooting for you. You have fans from the posers.
Yes.
We love it.
Good luck to you guys.
since it was announced, we were like, Team Mucho Mucho Amor, let's do this. Let's go to the Oscars.
Thank you.
Hope so.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank
So,
Okay, un abrazo. Ciao.
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 Thank
Bye.
you.